Let's look at some other Catholic symbols. In this photo, notice the numerous symbols of the sun, moon and stars above the windows. Further evidence of sun worship can be found in the dome of St. Peter's. Notice the sun at the center of the dome through which sunlight comes. A little known fact is that Catholic churches are built so that worshippers stand facing the east. Although churches may arbitrarily face in any direction, the prevalence and consistency of this practice in Catholic churches suggests that they mean something specific by it. Just as the Jewish temple had worshippers facing to the west, and the tabernacle likewise had its entrance on the east side, it is strange to find that this has been reversed. But then we read in Ezekiel 8:14-16, "He brought me to the north gate of the Lord's temple, and some women were sitting there, weeping for the god Tammuz. Have you seen this?" he asked. "But I will show you even more detestable sins than these." Then he brought me into the inner courtyard of the Lord's temple. At the entrance to the sanctuary, between the entry room and the bronze altar, there were about 25 men with their backs to the sanctuary of the Lord. They were facing east, bowing low to the ground, worshipping the sun. Catholic churches are built facing the east because it represents turning their backs to the Lord and instead worshipping the rising sun. Mass in Catholicism is something other than a simple remembrance of Christ's suffering on the cross, as it was intended to be. The Church of Rome has perverted it into a reenactment of Christ's sacrifice. It is claimed that the Catholic priest literally sacrifices Christ each time on the altar for the sins of those present and those who have died. The idea is that Jesus' death and resurrection was not a once and for all act, but that they need to continually crucify him over and over to keep atoning for sins. Pope Pius X described it as follows: "The Holy Mass is a prayer itself, even the highest prayer that exists. It is the sacrifice dedicated by our Redeemer on the cross, and is repeated every day on the altar." The blasphemy of the Catholic Church is that they claim to kill Jesus every day through the ritual, causing him perpetual suffering. Nothing could be more obviously from the mind of Satan than this. It is also full of bowing, crossings and genuflections. This is a far cry from the practice of Jesus or the apostles. Then there is the circular wafer, which again represents the sun. As it is held aloft, Catholics are encouraged to venerate or worship it. After being held aloft, it is then placed in the center of something called a monstrance. These are a few types of monstrance. You will instantly recognize the solar and lunar imagery. By placing the wafer, representing the sun, on the lunar monstrance, you symbolically create a sexual joining of the male and female gods. You may also notice that this monstrance looks like the logo for the United Nations, and we'll get into that later. The joining of the sun and crescent moon in this way was prevalent in pagan cultures. In this example, which is a pagan Canaanite pillar, we see raised hands in praise of the sun disk within the crescent moon. In this next one we see an Egyptian statuette of an Apis bull, which is one of the most complete representations of Mystery Babylon religion there could ever be. We have the bull itself, which as we know represents Nimrod. We have the sun disk representing Tammuz. We have the crescent moon, which represents Semiramis, and the serpent representing Satan, all compiled into one statue. So this is the most evil statue that you could possibly imagine. In this final example, we see an ancient depiction of Isis, the Egyptian Asherah, the female goddess, with the same symbolism. She is holding her son Tammuz, then there's the sun disk on her head within the crescent. Often within sun disks you'll see a face like this. Wherever you see a face within a sun, you are looking at a representation of Baal. Another feature of Catholicism is the crucifix. This is the image of Jesus still nailed to the cross, and only Catholics use it. Often depictions are far more graphic in their detail than this and include blood and gore. This is linked with the blasphemous doctrine of the Mass, where Christ is continually sacrificed on the altar. By perpetually displaying Jesus on the cross, they are continually crucifying him. Another feature of such crosses can be the circle or sun image around the intersection, as shown here. It is particularly prevalent in what are now called Celtic crosses. Referring back to the previous part, you should notice that it creates the quartered circle symbol, which represents Asherah, and which is supposedly used to transmit the energy of the goddess. The idea of continual works or sacrifices to appease the gods and to earn your salvation is a pagan one and exists in all false religions. As it was once put very succinctly, every other religion says, do, but Christianity is the only one that says, done. The sacrifice of Christ was a one-time only event that is completely sufficient for the atonement of sins. Jesus is now victorious over death, and salvation comes by faith alone. Satan would rather see Jesus being perpetually and endlessly punished, however, and hence these continuing representations of Christ on the cross. Satan is clinging hopelessly to the past, and enslaving humanity with works-based religion, which always either leads to feelings of pride or worthlessness, and both are as bad as each other. The Catholic idea of purgatory, where people spend a temporary period between heaven and hell being purified of their sins through punishment, again has no biblical basis whatsoever. It is entirely Babylonian. The idea of the halo, a circle of light or a sunburst around the head, is also a Catholic invention rooted in sun worship. Often when Mary is involved, the halo takes the form of a circle of stars, each one representing her demonic offspring.